Hello and welcome to everybody joining us today for our live web event. As we meet again online, I continue to be overwhelmed by the continued support of our CAF members and the apprenticeship community at all of our online events. Thank you to everybody joining us today for this exciting upcoming hour. We will be talking about the National Strategy for Supporting Women in Trades launched just this month by the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. We are joined by a great panel to talk about how it came together and what we are hoping to see moving forward. I am confident that everyone will find some great takeaways from the next hour. Before we get too far along, I'd like to make sure that everybody can hear me. If you can hear me, please introduce yourself in the chat section. We have over 200 people registered for today's event, and it's always nice to see who makes it up live. Nice. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cecilia Rayburn, and I am the Events and Communications Coordinator here with the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. I will be your host throughout today's event, and I'm glad you made it. I'd like to just take a quick second today to acknowledge that the land on which I'm gathering everybody virtually today is unceded Algonquin territory. Fall is a beautiful time of year here, and I'm so grateful and blessed to call this place my home. Throughout today's event, I invite you to join the conversation. Please share your thoughts and questions in the Q&A panel as well as the chat section, just like everybody's doing now. We will get to as many of your comments and questions as we can at the end of the presentation. To ensure the best experience for everybody, we've muted everyone's mics, but I'll be watching those chats and responding as much as I can as we go through. For anybody who's new to our events, the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum is a national nonprofit organization that connects Canada's apprenticeship community. Participants work collaboratively to support vibrant and innovative apprenticeship systems and policies with a view of creating and developing a highly skilled, inclusive, and mobile skilled trades workforce. Employers, unions, equity-seeking groups, educational institutions, and jurisdictional apprenticeship authorities support CAF annually through membership. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum is the only organization that brings together apprenticeship stakeholders from across trades, sectors, and across the country to share information and promising practices, identify challenges, and to propose joint solutions. As a national voice for the apprenticeship community, the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum influences apprenticeship strategies through research, discussions, and collaborations. Its research and events provide stakeholders with accurate, unbiased insights into the apprenticeship challenges and the barriers, as well as continuing to illustrate the substantial benefits of hiring and training apprentices. Just before I hand things over to France Davio, the Executive Director of the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, I would like to launch a quick poll to find out where everybody's from today. So if you have a quick second, it should pop up on your screen and let us know where you're joining from today. While everybody's answering that poll, I'd just like to continue to thank the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum members who continue to support our events and continue to support us through their annual membership. If you're interested in joining to be a CAF member, I'll leave a little link in the chat so you can join and check out our website about how to find more information. So with that, France Davio, thank you so much for joining us to share about our new initiative.
Hi, everyone. I just want to check that you can hear me. Cecilia, if you can let me know.
I can hear you.
And over here in our neck in the woods of Clarence Creek, Ontario, little town outside of Ottawa, right on cue, the dogs bark. So my apologies, right on cue. But listen, I'm so happy to be chatting with you today. You know, we were talking before this webinar about the road that we've taken to get here. And that's a little bit about what I want to chat with you today before we get to our very exciting panel. You know, if for those of you that have been engaged with CAF for the last couple of years, you've probably played a role and participated in some of these things that have led to this strategy. The road to get here has included, 2 very large events and a national task force. So in 2018, we had the event, our first event in Halifax, of supporting women in trades, and we had no idea how it was going to turn out. And there were over 360 participants, and of those, there were 150 of the participants who were tradeswomen and apprentices in the room. And it was a great opportunity for everyone to just get their voices heard. And during that time, what we thought would be precious is to have them, the tradeswomen and apprentices, come together and identify, in a perfect world, in a perfect Canada, what would the end result look like for them as it relates to being supported working in these trades. And so from that first event came, the outcome of that was a roadmap. And you see a snapshot of that on the left of your slide. And that roadmap was developed to get us all on the same page of what was important and where we needed to be. The second event that we had the year later was in Vancouver, on the other side of the country. And there again, we were astounded by the turnout of over 300 people. And we took the opportunity there, while everyone was there together, to take the roadmap and say, okay, we know where we need to go, and how are we going to get there? And so for those 2 days, the participants worked together to identify what are some of the tangible things that could be done to move the needle. And it's at that event that CAF made a commitment to continue with this endeavor and to actually put something together concrete. And so from the outcomes of those 2 events, we put out a call for a task force of CAF members, not knowing what to expect. And then again, the community continues to amaze us. Over 60 organizations came together. And I'll talk about the task force in a little bit. The purpose was really to put together a strategy. And, the strategy that we've launched this week, or last week, was just really to make sure that people understood that there was a way forward. And that the way forward was tangible and measurable and sustainable. And as we go through the strategy, some of you might think, well, this is really simple. Like, there's only 4 action items, but that's exactly the point. The point is that we wanted to make it so that it's reasonable and feasible, and most importantly, measurable. So we really wanted to make sure through this task force that it was really industry-led. Like, this is a community-developed strategy. And we had 60 organizations that came forward to be part of it. Now, it's quite challenging managing a task force of 60 organizations, 60 people. But with the leadership of the 4 individuals that you see on your screen, one of them that's with us today, Joanne, as a panelist, we were able to really bring everybody's ideas together. And now, it's certainly, I'll be the first to say that we couldn't make everyone's wish happen. We just don't have the resources. And there were a lot of good ideas. And the things that came out of the strategy are things that, as a task force, they felt were doable, again, measurable. And so those 4 action items, as I mentioned, are really, really simple. We committed to, in this strategy, developing a national campaign, a call to action campaign, where champions are recognized in this national movement. The second thing that we wanted to do is ensure that we communicate with all levels of governments the importance of numbers, the importance of targets. And we're going to talk about this a little later on in the strategy explanation. The third one was we wanted to develop toolboxes for employers, for unions, for organizations that deal with apprentices, educators, and for tradeswomen. A place where all these best practices that have been tried and tested over the last few years are located in one place. And the organizations that are in this toolbox have shared it willingly, have shared their best practices. And so you can go all in one place. And that was really important because there's a lot of good stuff happening across the country. We wanted to make sure to celebrate it and that people knew about it and didn't have to recreate the wheel all the time. The fourth one that we were adamant about for this strategy, and it was really important and everyone agreed, in order to affect change, you needed to have measurable targets. There have been numerous reports and research reports and reviews and literature reviews done around, the barriers for women in trades. I think I read in a report recently that there were over 300 projects that had been funded across the country over the years to address these barriers, and yet still, as a community, the number has not changed. So let's be real and let's agree that targets matter, because what gets measured gets done. So those are the 4 action items of the very simple strategy, and all of them you'll be able to see and tell are measurable, because that was really important in terms of identifying strategies. So the first strategy I wanted to review quickly is developing a call to action. The call to action in the campaign where champions would be recognized, and we are calling our strategy on social media with the hashtag Champions for Change. And what we wanted to do is create a pledge for those who hire and train apprentices to make a public commitment. And so one of the things that was really important for the task force is that it needed to be meaningful. It couldn't just be logo placements on a website, because there's a lot of that going around, and there's a lot of good programs and campaigns going on, but we wanted this one to make a tangible difference. And so what we were asking is those that hire and train apprentices are actually committing to, when they take the pledge, to hiring more and training more women apprentices, female apprentices, and providing workplace training as it relates to inclusivity and diversity and respectful workplaces, and also safe workplaces. So when we talk about the pledge, you have there in front of your screen what you're pledging to actually do. And one of the things that makes this Champions for Change champion really exciting, the program really exciting, is that these champions that are going to sign up are actually agreeing to publish their numbers and to track them year over year, and to have CAF engaged in sharing those numbers. It creates this community of champions, these organizations that are fully committed to change. And once we get more champions on board, and we have, some wonderful early adopters that have come on board, but the idea is, let's work together as a circle of champions, together with CAF, to really track a tangible change. Let's share best practices together. What are the things that are working? Where are some of the gaps? And perhaps some of the gaps can be addressed through CAF work. So it's really, when champions take the pledge, they're not only taking the pledge to publish their numbers, the number of women apprentices and tradespeople that they have currently working, but they pledge to keep tracking that every year and submitting that. And also they pledge to being part of this community. So I just wanted to highlight that as we worked through the development of this strategy, and we talked to organizations and stakeholders, we realized that there were already some champions out there ready to jump on board, and we want to acknowledge those today. And they're on your screen right now. And those are the organizations that have really taken a leap of faith in joining this movement. And we're very happy to have them on board. But we're also really excited to, through word of mouth and through this webinar, have more champions come on board. Now, I want to just clarify that the Champions Pledge is for employers, organizations that hire and train women apprentices and journey people. Because the numbers matter, and that's part of the reason why we have this pledge, is we want to track those numbers over time. Now, what we understand and know is that there are many, many organizations that want to be allies, that don't necessarily hire and train women apprentices and journey persons, but that want to be engaged. So for those allies, we're creating in the next couple of days an ally program just for you as well. We want everyone that wants to be part of it on board. But we also want to make sure that we keep the integrity of the Champions program. So there will be room for everyone to get involved, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more of that with you shortly. The second strategy, so that was only the first one. The second strategy is working with levels of government to talk about numbers and to hold people accountable for publishing numbers. And I guess it's a bit of a pressure for policy change. And we're going to talk about it with the panel, but this idea of targets makes a lot of people nervous. But what we realized through working through the two events and this task force is that they matter and they do affect change. So we'll have some time to chat about that a little bit later, but that's the second action item from this strategy. The third action item is to develop toolboxes, and you'll see a screenshot of the website, and each of those are toolboxes for the individual sectors, so employers, labor, tradeswomen, and educators. And those, that's a changing live page. And so if you, in your organizations, or if someone finds that they have a best practice that hasn't been shared yet or isn't there, that's the whole reason for this, is let's put it all in one place so that people don't have to recreate the wheel. So right now there's a ton of links on there and shared resources. That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning of the work of the task force. But there's a lot of room for more information. Let's make this the hub of tools for everyone in order to create a supportive opportunities and workplaces for women in the trades. The fourth action items is to actually in this strategy set a measurable target. And there was a whole subcommittee of the task force, and Joanne Greeley, who's on the panel, was the lead for this particular subcommittee, and it was a large task. And she can talk about it a little bit later. We'll chat with her. But setting a goal, there are many, many goals out there you can hear, and it sounds really good. The sound bites are good. 20 by 30, 30 by 30. Those sound really good. But the purpose of this strategy and the purpose of this action item was to set a target that was reachable and measurable. And so right now, and over the past few years, the general number of women apprentices in the trades that are usually underrepresented in construction, manufacturing, and transportation that number is 4.5%. It has not moved for many, many years. So the target was identified as 15%. So through this strategy and through these action items, we firmly believe that it's possible that in 2030, there will be 15%. Is it is it perfect? Is it wonderful? Is it considered equity? Who knows? However, it is a measurable target to move us forward. We've been stuck in the 4.5% or 4% for way too long. It's time to move the needle. And so 15% by 2030 is a number that we can all, if we work together, achieve. It's the first target of probably many. So when launching this national strategy, we need the help of our stakeholders. We need the help of CAF members in order to build this movement, in order to commit, to make commitments, tangible commitments to moving the number. We aligned, the task force has been working on this for, well, a year now. The first call out was September of last year. And so for the last year, they've been getting together and working together on making sure that there was consensus on these things that are put forward today, and that there was buy-in from the community that was involved. But we wanted to make a big splash, and so this is National Women's History Month. What a better, there's no better time to launch this national strategy. And so we sent out the press release, and you will notice that we're heavily embarked on a social media campaign to get this strategy socialized so people understand what it is and people understand how they can get involved. We have the webinar today with a large number of people, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you've all joined. And throughout the following months, you'll see some continued social media posts, some continued communications pieces that will culminate in December with a national feature in some prominent publications. In terms of the launch, what we wanted to do is really highlight the early adopters, and you have them there on your screen. And we have an awesome communications team. Cecilia, who's running the webinar today, and Sean Watson are both, our communications department of two extraordinaire. And the idea is we want to make sure that the champions that come on board and the allies later that come on board, that we recognize you and that you are recognized in public for taking a leap of faith. It's important because as a couple of points, as the community or the people in Canada see these champions on board on social media or in publications or in the news, they will see that there are organizations and companies that are safe spaces that they can go if they're interested in becoming an apprentice, can go to these companies that have made these commitments. So it's important for us, the champions that are taking the pledge with us, to provide some ample opportunity for exposure for doing that with us. That's the bulk of the national strategy. I'm happy that we all have the chance to discuss it today. It's hard to do in one press release. So I'm so happy that you're all here. And I just personally feel so passionate about this and am fully committed to seeing this through for many years. And I'm so excited to be celebrating these successes and to see what the future holds. And I'm just going to ask Cecilia at this point if there are any questions that I can take specifically on this strategy.
Let me just go and see. We've got a couple published questions so far. So one of the questions around the pledge itself is if people can take the pledge who are not CAF members.
Really good question. This has nothing to do with CAF membership. Any organization that can make the commitment and agree to the pledge items and that hires hires women apprentices and tradespersons can submit their pledge form to become a champion. It's free. There's no strings attached, except for your agreement to get on board and publish your numbers. That's the only thing.
So there's a couple other questions, but I think they'll be great after the panel because some of them might get answered by the panel chat. So yeah, I think we can move on to that portion, and I'll keep collecting the questions. If anybody continues to have questions or comments, please continue to put them in the Q&A and in the chat spots, and then we'll get to them at the end.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we're going to move forward to the panel. This is the exciting part. And I have the privilege of introducing our panel. And so I'm going to read their bios, and you will see why we're so lucky to have these individuals as part of our panel today. And then we'll hear a little bit from them, and then we'll go into the question and answer. So our first panelist is Joanne Greeley. And as I mentioned, Joanne was one of the leads of the task force, and I'm super happy to have had the opportunity to work with Joanne. And so let me read a little bit about Joanne. Joanne thrives on helping and supporting people to live their best lives they can. Her honesty and integrity have been key in her ability to communicate the needs of equity groups. She is a natural leader and has been an advocate and mentor for women working in the building trades for more than 15 years. Joanne is a Red Seal journeyed electrician and owner of Joanne Greeley Electric, and was the targets and research lead for CAF's Supporting Women in Trades Task Force. Joanne was chosen as the 250 emerging leaders in Canada to attend the Governor General's Leadership Conference in June 2021. She facilitates leadership training with women in science, engineering, trades, and technology, WINSET, and brought together a group of diversity and inclusion experts, the Diversity Network, to create the document Using Balance to Build, Supporting Gender Diversity in Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Trades. She's a member of the Provincial Apprenticeship Certification Board in Newfoundland and Labrador for her second term, and participant in the Red Seal Occupational Standard Group. The recipient of several awards for her work in diversity and inclusion, Joanne's wish is that each person have the same opportunities no matter their gender, race, or sexuality. Joanne is the Engagement and Events Coordinator for the Office to Advance Women Apprentices, Newfoundland and Labrador. Our next panelist is Rebecca Crange. Rebecca is a Cree Métis woman, a business professional with passion for Indigenous relations and changing the socioeconomic profile of Indigenous peoples in Canada. She's a Red Seal journeyperson electrician with more than 25 years experience in the construction industry. Her work experience includes construction fieldwork, government administration, executive level support, and company-wide education on Indigenous issues, as well as engagement and advocacy to support Indigenous equality within construction projects at Bird. Rebecca was a CAF strategy for Women in Trades, the SWIT task force member, and is passionate about improving the representation of women in the skilled trades across Canada to ensure there are opportunities in all the projects. Drawing from her firsthand experience of the barriers women and Indigenous peoples face in the industry, Rebecca supports all underrepresented groups to pursue careers in the skilled trades. She's a positive source for change in pursuing solutions and finding pathways to success for underrepresented people. Rebecca is currently the Indigenous Business Relations Lead at Bird Construction. Our next panelist is Chelsea French. Chelsea began their career journey in the trades 15 years ago as a maintenance coordinator for BC Housing in the downtown east side of Vancouver. They operated their own home repair and renovation company, and in 2014 became an apprentice truck and transport mechanic. Chelsea is an active member of the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 115, serving as the executive board member and auditor. An executive and co-chair of the BC chapter of Build Together, Chelsea supports and mentors women, transgender, and non-binary people working in the skilled construction trades. They work to create change and lend support to LGBTQ+ trades workers and advocates for maternity improvements and inclusive workplaces with a focus on recruitment and retention. Chelsea is a full-time commercial truck and transport mechanic, shop steward, first aid attendant, and member of the company's Occupational Health and Safety Committee. So as you can see, we have such an exciting panel, and we have questions that we're going to ask them. But before, I just want to give them each a minute or two to quickly say hello and introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Joanne?
Hi, thanks so much, Franz. That was a great introduction. I tell you, it makes me blush when you say all those awesome things. I'm just really excited to be here today. As you mentioned, I've been in the construction industry for 15 years, and I've seen such great changes over those years. Due partially to some of the things that Newfoundland and Labrador has implemented for women in construction trades. And I'm always excited to be around other tradeswomen, to hear their stories, to be able to support them in any way that I can. And now through this task force and being able to work with the Office to Advance Women Apprentices to be, on the ground running, to be able to see that change and help that happen. So I want to thank you very much for the invite today.
All right, thanks, Joanne. Let's hear from Rebecca.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining the webinar from Treaty 6 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, as well as the Métis people. As France introduced me, I am an Indigenous Red Seal electrician from Northern Alberta with over 25 years in the construction industry. I'm really excited to be here today. I think it's an important conversation we're having about how to change the status of women in skilled trades across the country. And I'm just pleased to be here representing Bird, one of the early adopters, and excited to hear what we have to say and what the outcomes are today. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Chelsea, let's hear from you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm super excited to see how many people have logged on to this webinar to try and make some changes for all of us working in the trades, and it's going to be a great panel.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. All right, let's get into the questions, because that's what people are really here for, actually, probably. So we're going to start you off with, I have questions. I have lots of questions, but I'll stick to just a couple. And then we'll see what those that are in attendance, if they have questions for you as well. Let's start with you, Joanne, because you were involved from the very beginning. You attended the conference in 2018 in Halifax. That's where we first met. And then in 2019, and then you joined the task force, and then you agreed to be the team leader. And then not only that, you agreed to take on the targets subcommittee, which was, interesting conversations. So you, and really honestly, since the launch of this, or the soft launch of this campaign, you have been instrumental in reaching out to potential champions and connecting organizations to this campaign. So what drives you? What makes you so passionate about this particular strategy? Like, why is this different?
I think the reason I'm so passionate is because I've lived it. When I started out 15 years ago, there were very few other women working in construction trades. So when you do see another woman, you wanted to pal up with them and find out their experiences. And from early on, I volunteered with the Office to Advance Women Apprentice when they opened 11 years ago. And to have that camaraderie with other tradeswomen and to be able to mentor each other and have conversations made me realize that a lot of us were going through the same things. And one of the biggest issues that we had was trying to get jobs. And when I would talk to other people about my struggles, they would be really surprised and say, well, women can be doctors and lawyers and firefighters. And I said, yeah, but for some reason, we can't be electricians and carpenters and mechanics. And there was that real block there. So when I found out about this, the task force, I wanted to be part of it because I wanted other people to have the opportunities that I had. The Office to Advance Women Apprentices does a lot of work around getting opportunities for women, getting them in the door, getting their first job, making sure that they're getting the training they need. And I think it's just great that those offices now have been extended across Canada so that the struggles will be lessened. Not that they're going to completely go away, because we know that's not part of it, but that they've lessened. And that I'm so passionate about talking to companies because they're the ones that can make the change. And I remember I was a fourth-year apprentice and I was out of work. And someone had said, call this gentleman. He's got lots of work. It's residential work. And when I spoke to him, he couldn't believe that I wanted to be an electrician. And I explained to him that I was a fourth year and I was an electrician. And I made a deal. I said, hire me on for a month. If I'm terrible and you don't like it and I'm not working out, I'll walk away, no problem. And of course, after the month, he gave me a raise. He couldn't believe how hard I worked. Sometimes we just need to get in there so that we can prove ourselves. And I always just find it interesting that some people somehow think that gender is going to affect how I can comprehend electricity. So, at the end of the day, we're just going to work to do a job. So I'm really, really passionate about this strategy. I also think, as Rebecca had said earlier, we're starting a conversation that perhaps not everybody has had. Newfoundland and Labrador has certainly been having this conversation for a long time. We've had targets on our natural resource job sites for years. And I am the product of that. I would not have my red seal had I not had those opportunities on those large projects. So that's what drives me. And I love the work. I love it. And I just love hearing the success stories afterwards. So I think it's really important.
That's great. And, we're going to talk about targets a little bit later. So you're not off the hook to talk about that. So I think it's an important conversation that we all need to have together. Rebecca, your employer, Bird, has the distinction of being the very first company to take the Champions for Change pledge as part of the strategy. And it wasn't a difficult conversation with you and with your employer, even though we were asking for numbers, right? Numbers. And the idea in this strategy is, yes, to put the numbers there, but it's not to shame organizations or companies about their numbers. It's to celebrate the progression over time. And to even that little slight change, we should all celebrate. And so, why did Bird feel so strongly about taking this public pledge?
Well, Bird is a national company, and we have a large range of trades across our projects. And I think we have a huge opportunity to make a difference across the country. On September 28th, we merged with Stuart Olson, which is an equally large construction company. And we have nearly 5,000 employees, which provides even more opportunity to make an impact. The nature of Champions for Change is aligned with our company goals and strategies, and skilled trades is essential to our business. So we want to improve the diversity of our teams. Women are a large untapped resource across our country. We have nearly 50% female population, and as you see by the numbers, we're around 4.5% women in skilled trades, which means there's a huge gap, and there's that opportunity to change that in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and we're super excited too that that Bird took the leap of faith, and hoping that others will join on board. Chelsea, all three of you are certified tradespeople, and Joanne and Rebecca's career has taken them on new paths, but you are still making your livelihood as a commercial truck and transport mechanic. So the national strategy holds organizations accountable to provide respectful workplaces, anti-bullying training, anti-harassment, and to include those in the pledge that they're committing to bringing that into their workplaces. What impact does this potential systemic change have for you?
Sorry. So realistically, everybody wants to go to work and work in a safe, comfortable environment where they feel respected, where they feel like they're valued, where they feel like their job is recognized. And, you know, that's just what everybody wants, right? So, and it's hard when you are a woman in trades, because unfortunately the spaces aren't there for you to even get in and do these jobs sometimes. So we need the space to be able to step into these spots. So it's, I think this is really important because there's not a lot of opportunity for all tradespeople. Women aren't looking for a handout for the job. They're looking for an opportunity, just like everybody else, to work a career that makes a livable wage, that makes it so we have a job that we love and we can support our families, right? So this initiative, having employers step up and say, hey, we're here for you, we've got a spot for you, is a really big deal, because there's a lot of tradespeople who, as apprentices, get turned away because it's an investment in your company. It's an investment to put money into apprentices. And sometimes that seems like a lot, but investing in your apprentices and invests in your business, right? So it's a big deal. And I think just any employer who's willing to stand up and say, we got you, and we're going to create a safe space for you where you don't have to put on your suit of armor every morning to go to work because you're scared of being harassed and treated poorly. And you know, I think I'm so excited about this, and I can see the potential for such growth for tradespeople. You know, in BC right now, we have something that's, you know, slightly controversial going on. It's the community benefits agreement. Some people love it, some people hate it. And the idea is there's kind of a quota, and everybody hates that word quota. Even tradespeople hate that word quota. We don't want to be a quota hire, but we want an opportunity. We want a spot to even just show up to prove our ability, you know, and it's working. Like right now, we have a couple projects going on, some highway projects for paving. Like we have 27% local hires in these paving contracts. We have 23% women on these paving contracts right now. We have 5% LGBTQ2S plus on these projects, and we have 11% Indigenous people working on these projects. And these are just a couple small projects. This, you know, right now is a project for Canada-wide to step up and support people. And, you know, these numbers, 15% is achievable when we have employers that step up and say, we got you, right?
Yeah, well, okay, so let's talk about targets then. But you mentioned the CBAs, or the community benefits agreements. Let's talk about targets. It makes people nervous to have those conversations. So why are, you know, in your experience, you mentioned, Chelsea, that they make a tangible difference. And so, Joanne, talk to me about the conversations that were happening with the strategy folks, the task force, when you were dealing with having to come up with a target. Like, what was the conversation like? What were people saying?
Right, and you're exactly right. Targets are very controversial, and it's not just employers, it's tradeswomen as well that some of them don't like it. So one of the first things I asked the committee to do was to read that document, Using Balance to Build, which was created here in Newfoundland and Labrador around our projects. And our projects did have quotas and targets for women's participation, and trade unions were very involved because it was a union. Those were union projects, and we followed through that document on what worked and what didn't work and why it was so important. And Chelsea mentioned it earlier, and it's one of, you know, women need the space to walk into. We need to have that space created for us. We spend so much time, it's like break down barriers and we've got to fight for this. And at the end of the day, companies and unions and governments have to say, hey, we want all people to have the ability to go and work in the job that they've trained for, and whatever it is you decide to train for. And having those spaces available for us to walk into is so important. I have been on jobs where we've had 22% women's participation, and I can't quote you. I can't give you a quote. I can't give you any numbers on that. I know that that's what it was at that time. But the whole culture on that site was so different because it wasn't. And, these other women will know. It's like, ooh, there's a woman mechanic over there. Or, there's a female electrician. This was, oh, she runs the biggest crane and she's a welder and she's a millwright. And when you have that many women on site, it really changes the women's attitude as well, because we're just all here doing our work. And it's what Chelsea said. We just want to go to work and get our paycheck and do our job and have a happy life. We're really not looking for anything special on site, but we want the opportunity to get in the door and to get our training. We want the opportunity.
Yeah. And this is for all three of you or anyone that wants to chime in. When we talk about targets and numbers, one of the responses that we hear often, and this is in a few venues now and a few meetings that we've heard this, is, well, it's great to have quotas and targets, but there's no one in the pipeline. There are no women in the pipeline applying for jobs. So I don't want to be penalized for not being able to meet the quota. What do you say to that?
There's a lot of women applying for jobs. I think that's a misconception, 100%.
Absolutely.
I agree.
It's shocking. And, I'm with the International Union of Operating Engineers, and, pipeline is kind of one of our things. And there are women looking for these jobs. And, I'm going to share an experience. I got laid off years ago. And I put my resume out as Chelsea, and I didn't get calls back. I changed my name to Chris on resumes, and I got calls back. So there are still people not even looking at our resumes, even though we are qualified for these jobs, because it's just the way it is still. And this is why, again, this is a big deal, having employers step up and say, I'm looking for you. We want you. We're here to support you. Like this is a game changer for us tradespeople to create space for us to prove our worth. And again, I go back to these quotas. Like, I cringe every time that word comes up, because I don't want to be the equity hire. I don't want to be the quota hire, because everyone's like, oh, they just got the job because they're quota. No, I just want to show up and do a job and prove that I have the ability to do the job. Give me the opportunity. If I'm not qualified, find somebody else.
Well said.
I agree. I heard that a lot. I went through my trade in the mid 90s, and I was often the only woman on many construction sites. And I heard, you only have this job because you're a female, because you're Indigenous, and those types of comments frequently. And I feel that without having that space carved out for me, though, I wouldn't have had the opportunity. And now that there are those spaces being made, we have chances for these women to get in there and create a career and prove. Sometimes we have to prove ourselves. It's like, we all know it. Prove that we're there to do the job and become an apprentice and a journeyman eventually.
Joanne, did you have anything to add on that?
I was just going to go back. You said over the conversations we had within our committee, they were very interesting. Some people on that task force that worked on the quotas and targets, very passionate, and as a group, we did agree that this was something that was going to move the needle, that was going to make change. But how do we come forward? And you mentioned earlier, we didn't want it to be a great slogan. We wanted to be actual target that was something that could be reached. So that was really important. important to us.
That's great. And, you know, it had to be measurable too. Like
Yes.
you said, it couldn't just be a soundbite. Like, we are committing to measuring these numbers and tracking them over time. Otherwise, it's all for naught. And so there are no excuses. And, you know, part of this strategy it doesn't show a recruitment strategy. That's a whole other endeavor, which can come out of this. Absolutely. Maybe we can work on something together. Nationally, there's you know, talk of national promotion of the skilled trades campaigns and things and that. But it's almost like we need to get our house in order before we invite people for dinner. I kind of see it that way. Like, this strategy is for the industry to get their house in order and to really be able to, you know, develop hiring policies, HR policies, respectful workplaces, and move the needle that way. And, you know, then we can start inviting everyone for dinner and we'll be ready. So that's kind of the way I see it. The last thing that I just want to bring out, and then maybe we'll go to a few questions, is we only have an hour and we could talk about this forever.
Oh, yeah.
And this one is more of a commentary, but maybe Chelsea, you wanna chime in here. What we've heard through this process of developing a supporting women in trades strategy is that there are a lot of underrepresented groups that will benefit from movement within the scope of this strategy. Although it's aimed and it's called supporting women in trades, it's really supporting everyone in the trades to have equal opportunity and opportunities in respectful workplaces. And we don't want to exclude anyone. And we had a webinar a few months ago with Pride at Work Canada, where the 2S LGBTQ plus community, you know, mentioned that these strategies are important, but it's also important not to exclude anyone that wants to participate in change. So the idea through this is to really create inclusion and respectful workplaces, and changing the makeup of those who get in, you know, want to join the skilled trades. So I just wanted to make that commentary that as we move forward, we want to make sure that we're inclusive and that we don't exclude anyone. So I wonder, Chelsea, because you've done some work in this area, if you have any commentary on that.
Well, I think you're right. You don't want anybody left behind. Absolutely. And I think sometimes it's hard. You've got to take a few steps in one direction to be able to create movement for everybody else to come along with you. And I feel like for, with the BC Building Trades, Build Together, like that started off as a women's committee. The language alone was the women's committee. And in BC, we've opened it up to be anyone who has experience as a woman. So that includes transgender, non-binary people. I think sometimes we have to just put a little bit of effort into one spot just to open the doorway. And then everybody else goes in together. And I think absolutely this is what is we're going to start creating this movement for everybody all together in this movement. A diverse workplace, is a great workplace because we show up with all these different abilities and skills and personalities, and creates a well-rounded environment. And it's going to happen. We're going to get there.
So I see Cecilia showing up. I think that she's giving me we're running out of time.
I didn't know how to interrupt such a great conversation, but I just want to start by acknowledging some of the comments that are being submitted from other women who have also been hired as a quota or as a diversity hire. Lots of comments about just how grateful the community is for everybody taking their time to be on the panel today and to share their experiences that are really shaping some forward motion. So I just wanted to make sure that all of our panelists got to hear that. And there's a couple really great questions. I don't think we're going to have time to get to them all. But so one of the questions that was voted up the most is from Teresa. Would an educational institution that trains apprentices be considered a champion or an ally? And I thought that was a really good question because it might help clarify some of those differences.
Mm-hmm. As it relates to training apprentices, we would consider those organizations allies. The goal of the Champions pledge that we have right now is really to increase the number of apprentices, women apprentices who have job opportunities, who are given job opportunities and are retained in those jobs and have meaningful work over throughout their apprenticeship and as they become journey people. So, but we will be creating an iLab program that's just as snazzy.
And there was another question from Keith that I thought maybe, Rebecca, you might have some support for Keith. He was saying, as an employer, that they're interested in being a part of this pledge, but don't currently have any way of tracking gender of their employees. Do you have any suggestions on how they might be able to start that? Or can you point them in Keith in a good direction?
So what we do at Bird is we have self-declaration forms with all of our onboarding documents where people can choose to self-declare their gender or their nationality, and that's how we track our numbers. But he can feel free to call me if he would like. I think I know Keith.
Thank you. So we are approaching the hour, and just in respect of everybody's time, I just wanted to thank all of the panelists again for your participation, all of the hard work that you've done to get us where we are so far. Thank you to all of our participants. We had in and out almost 200 people joining us today, so that's fantastic. I've put a link at the top of the chat. If you are interested in becoming a champion for change, you can find the website attached just in that comment at the top there. And anybody who is interested in continuing to participate in the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum online events, I'm excited to share that we have our National Apprenticeship Symposium going live next week on the 14th. Registration is still open and it is live on our website. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, please feel free to reach out at any time. I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon and enjoy the rest of your week.